Hi first graders, my name is Mrs. Evans and I'll be one of your art docents this year. This school year we are primarily going to focus on art history and art subject matter, so what types of things artists portray in their artwork. Today's lesson will focus on artists painting people at work. We will review what is work, the reasonings why artists choose to paint people at work, and we'll review some famous artists who have painted people at work and examine their artwork. At the end, we'll complete an art assignment ourselves, highlighting people at work. So let's begin. So what is work? Work is to exert oneself by doing mental or physical work for a purpose or out of necessity, for like food or shelter or money. Men and women work at many different kinds of jobs. Some people work at taking care of a home or a family. Some people have jobs that they go to every day. Some work is done outdoors. Some work is done inside. Different kinds of work sometimes call for different types of clothing. The kinds of work people do have changed over the years because of machinery. Long ago, before machines were invented, all work had to be done by hand. Why do artists paint people at work? Artists paint people at work to create a visual record of our lives. Work consumes a large portion of our lives. Therefore, it is important to create a record of it. Next, we will review several famous art pieces completed by famous artists depicting people at work. While reviewing the different pieces, keep in mind the following questions. Which workers do you see in the paintings in this portfolio that show people working in the same way as they did long ago? Which are different? Which paintings show people working together? Which shows one person working alone? Which paintings look the most realistic? The least realistic? Which paintings show the most imagination? Which paintings are painted in bright, strong colors? And which paintings give us a feeling of movement and action? Which paintings is the most quiet? And lastly, which painting is your favorite? The Washerwoman by Pierre Auguste Renoir, 1841 to 1919. How does your family do its laundry? People in some parts of the world still wash their clothing in a river, as they have done for years. In this painting, we see two women as they kneel by the moving water. Another in a long dress and apron is rolling up her sleeves. A child, hands behind her back, watches. We see some large trees and a building in the background and some less distinct trees farther away. The paint is applied thickly in rather long, narrow brush strokes. He was an impressionist artist and wanted to show natural light on people. He worked to make glowing colors in sunlight and shadow areas. He used no outlines. Renoir grew up in Paris and at 13 became an apprentice in a porcelain factory. He always wanted to be an artist and spent hours in the famous Louvre Museum, drawing from statues and copying the old masters. When he was 21, he enrolled in an art school where he met Claude Monet, who is also to become a famous artist too. They became close friends. Renoir was a happy man and loved to paint people. He often used his wife, children, and the children's nurses as his models. He achieved fame and financial success, but in his 40s, he was crippled by arthritis. In his last years, he had to have his brushes strapped to his hands, but painted furiously in spite of intense pain. Cabinet Maker, Jacob Lawrence, 1917 to 2000. This picture was painted with gouache on paper. Gouache is an opaque watercolor. Can you tell what these workers are doing? They are carpenters. and the painting is called Cabinet Makers. The cabinets they are making will be placed in houses or stores. 5 men are working hard. They wear blue overalls and shirts and are placed in each corner with 1 man in the center. The positions of their bodies show us how hard they are working and how strong they are. Can you tell what tools they are using? Perhaps someone in your family uses tools like these at home or at work. Can you find someone in the painting who is using a measuring tool? Is someone drilling a hole? Do you know what a level is? Can you find one in the picture? Can you find the tool called a plane? The artist Jacob Lawrence was emphasized with their powerful arms and hands. Most of the shapes we see are geometric and sharp-edged. The figures are angular and painted in a rather flat, stylized manner rather than a highly realistic way. Can you find strong horizontal lines and shapes, vertical lines and shapes, piercing diagonals that give us a feeling of movement? The reds and blues are strong, and the brilliant accents of white and black lead our eyes around the composition. The shapes and figures are arranged in a very orderly manner and lead our eyes to other parts of the picture. Notice how the visual texture of the grain of the wood is in a unifying factor. Lawrence helps us realize the strength and dignity of work in his paintings. Jacob Lawrence was born in 1917 in New Jersey. He spent his early childhood in Pennsylvania, moving to New York when he was about 13. He joined a CCC work gang in 1937 and learned how to handle a shovel. Thanks to a scholarship, he returned to the American Artist School until 1939, when he became one of many artists working for the Federal Arts Project of the WPA. He painted the things he saw around him and expressed his feelings about the life he experienced in Harlem. He was affected by the Harlem Renaissance, a movement between 1919 and 1929 during which Black artists focused on these 3 aspects: the glorification of Black Americans' African heritage, the tradition of Black folklore, and the interest in the details of Black life. Cabinet Makers stem from Lawrence's personal experiences of everyday visual encounters. He is described as being compassionate and hopeful and a fascinating storyteller. Lacemaker, Jan Vermeer, 1632 to 1675. Does anyone in your family like to knit, crochet, or do needlepoint? The young woman in Jan Vermeer's painting is making lace. You have probably seen lace trim on dresses and blouses. Today, machines make lace, but long ago, it was all made by hand. To make lace, one uses a very firm cushion and places pins in certain positions according to a pattern or a diagram. Then thread or string is wound on little bobbins. The lace maker then winds and knots the string around the pins, removing them as she finishes. It takes a long time to make lace in this manner, but it is very beautiful. The woman in this picture, probably the artist's wife, as she frequently posed for him, is working very quietly and intensely, and the picture gives us a peaceful, calm feeling. Her head is bent downward. We see her hands very clearly. Can you tell from which side the light is coming? Can you describe the colors you see? Look how carefully Vermeer's painted her hair. She is wearing a style that was popular in her day. Her dark hair contrasts with a light background. Vermeer made this painting in Holland about the time the Pilgrims were settling in America. He is famous for his quiet masterpieces, pictures of people inside their homes. A glowing light floods his works. He joined an art guild when he was 21 and later became an art dealer, but was unable to sell his works because people wanted dramatic subjects and more lively portraits. His business was never profitable, and he had money problems as he supported his wife and 11 children. He painted his greatest works between the ages of 28 and 38. 5 years later, he died suddenly of an unknown cause. It was not for another 200 years that his paintings, only 35, are credited to him today, were acclaimed as among the finest ever created. Artist and model, Marc Chagall, 1887 to 1985. People often pay an artist to make a portrait of themselves or a member of their family. Artists sometimes hire a model to pose for them and then sell the picture they have made. In this painting, we see two people working, the artist at his easel and the model as she poses for him. The artist shows himself as a young man with a mop of red hair and a turquoise face. He has one arm raised to the easel and one hand holds his palette, and his eyes look toward the model in the red dress. He painted this picture when he was 60 years old. We see bright, happy colors. Chagall especially liked to use this particular blue. Find the yellow and red places. Do you wonder about the bird in the upper right corner? Its head is turned toward the sun. There is a butterfly-like angel with a human head peeking from behind the easel. In the lower part, we see a blue donkey head with a human arm. The woman appears to be sitting on the donkey's back. Chagall loved to use fantasy and imagination. From his Russian childhood, he learned of folk tales and fairy tales, and his paintings often make us smile and think of a happy dream world in which delightful things happen and laws of gravity are overturned. His paintings reflect his love for his family and for his Jewish heritage. He was the oldest of 9 children. He especially loved color. He said, "Color is everything. Color is vibration like music. An artist has a born color that is inside him, his own color love." He applied his talent in many directions, illustrating books, creating pottery, and designing costumes and scenes for theatrical productions. He painted the ceiling of the Paris Opera House. His marvelous stained glass windows are world famous. Chagall died in 1985 at the age of 98. Life of a Fireman, Nathaniel Currier, 1813 to 1888, and James Ives, 1864 to 1895. This print was made in 1866, when it was an honor to be a volunteer fireman. This means that these New York firemen were not paid wages. The different groups of men competed with each in racing to fires and putting them out efficiently. We see the first steam-propelled fire engine belching smoke and sparks as it races to a raging, burning building that is seen on the far left. Do you see the flames and billows of black smoke? See the hose cart near the pumping truck and the hook and ladder wagon coming around the corner? What kind of noise do you think you would have heard? How would the air have smelled? Find some small details. See the men running behind and beside the wagons? We can see a neat pattern of windows on the buildings in the background. The bright red wheels are also to create a repeated pattern. Nathaniel Currier and James Ives worked as partners in a printing business. They produced 3 new pictures every week, and their work has provided us with much visual material about life in America in the second half of the 1800s. The pictures were hand-painted after they were printed. When cameras took the place of this kind of pictorial reporting, the firm was sold and soon collapsed. The many prints they made became very valuable and have been collected and treasured through the years. The Ironers, Edgar Degas, 1834 to 1917. Degas was a French artist famous for his pastel drawings of ballerinas and usually painted portraits of his family and friends, but was also an attentive observer of the working world. Specifically, in milliners' workshops or laundries. He took a special interest in washerwomen between 1869 and 1895. The painting here depicts two women hard at work, weary to the bone, a lucid view of the working class. Degas concentrated on the women's gestures in a representation that is neither heroic nor caricatured. His subjects and technique and treatments of his works would later influence the young Pablo Picasso. Through his career, Degas also produced bronze sculptures, prints, and drawings. Degas is notably regarded as one of the founders of Impressionism. Impressionism is a 19th century art movement characterized by small, thin, yet visible brushstrokes, open composition, emphasis on accurate depiction of light, ordinary subject matter, inclusion of movement, and unusual angles. But Degas rejected the term, preferring to be called a realist, and did not paint outdoors as many Impressionists did. The Sower at Sunset, Vincent van Gogh, 1853 to 1890. The Sower at Sunset was painted by Van Gogh in 1888. Among Van Gogh's long list of famous pieces, pheasant imagery, and especially that of the sower, was something Van Gogh turned to numerous times throughout his career. His affliction with the subject was partly a response to the work of other romantic realists and his own social ideals. The sower represented the eternal cycle of agricultural life, of honorable endeavor and tradition. The sun in the painting is symbolic, as in many of his paintings, shines with unearthly luminescence. He has created an orb of light from which short, precise brushstrokes radiate outwards. The rest of the piece is made of short, quick brushstrokes that leave the ground a textured and slightly surreal feel. Barely seen are two crows emerge from the fractured background. Van Gogh was primarily a post-impressionist painter who is among the most famous influential figures in history. In just over a decade, he created about 2,100 artworks, including landscapes, still lifes, portraits, and self-portraits, and are characterized by bold colors and dramatic, impulsive, and expressive brushwork that contributed to the foundation of modern artwork. All right, first graders, now that we've gone over why artists paint people at work and reviewed several famous artists and their artwork depicting people at work, we're going to give it a try ourselves. Today, we're going to do a color wash painting of a drawing you will create depicting someone or somebody's at work. This is my example of a doctor. I can't wait to see what you guys do. Let's get started. First, what is a color wash? Color wash is a popular technique in painting using thin paint to create a subtle wash of color over a surface. Color washing can be done with any color of paint and is generally applied with brushes over another paint color using long sweeping strokes to meld the colors together. For our purposes today, we will complete a drawing using crayons and wash over the crayons with watercolor paints or other diluted paints in order to create a contrast between the wax within the crayons and the diluted glaze within the paints. You will watch as the paints will resist the wax areas of your crayons and provide a nice colored background to your art piece. See the examples here on this slide and the use of the different colors and how the crayon drawing blends with the color wash. Materials needed for this assignment include a piece of white paper, cardstock, printer paper, whatever you have at home is just fine, crayons, watercolor paints or other diluted washes, which means you could use water with food coloring, or if you have any acrylic paints at home, you can dilute them down with water, a paintbrush or paintbrushes if you want to use multiple colors, and water containers for cleaning your brushes. Step 1. Determine your subject. The first step is to determine your subject. What profession or type of worker do you want to draw? It can be anything or anyone you want. Think, what do your parents do for work? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you do for work? Yes, even you work. You're a student, which is hard work. You also probably do chores around the house or practice hobbies or sports that can also be hard work too. So figure out your subject, and then let's move on to the next step. Step 2 is to draw your subject using crayons and your white piece of paper. You'll want to draw your person or people at work. You'll want to add details like a background to show where your subject is working. You can choose to use colored crayons, as many colors as you'd like, or you can also use your white crayon to draw, as it will also show up once you complete your color wash. Just a note, make sure to press down firmly as you draw with your crayons to ensure a waxy consistency buildup on your paper that will help with your color wash resistance. Step 3, it's time to do the color wash. When you are satisfied with your crayon drawing of people at work, you'll want to take your paintbrushes and watercolors and apply long sweeping strokes of paint across and all over your paper. Choose as little or as many colors as you would like, but be careful not to oversaturate your paper, which means put too much water on your paper because it could potentially tear. The crayons will resist the color wash to help create a colorful piece of artwork. Once you are finished and satisfied with your piece, find a safe place for it to dry. Great job, young artist! You're done. If you are satisfied with how your art piece turned out and it has completely dried, please go ahead and complete the final steps. Turn it around, and of course sign your artwork, as all artists should sign their work. And then take a photo of your finished product and upload it to your Seesaw account to share with your teachers and classmates. Include a description of what you drew, what your subject matter was, and why you think it's important to paint people at work. Great job! See you next time.